Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about the price for Warhammer the Old World. As I've been posting videos since the embargo dropped, I've had a lot of questions regarding the price, what my thoughts are, and a few other things, so I want to kind of do a video, break up my schedule a little bit, and talk about this here. Some of you have been asking why I haven't talked about this just yet, and it's actually quite fair to ask that. It's mostly just I've been recording some stuff in advance before having a little procedure done on my arm, but I'm feeling alright to record, to break up my schedule. There's like 50 other videos done in advance anyway. So let's talk about this, let's have a proper breakdown, and yeah, let's try not to insult each other in the comments, please, because I know that this topic itself can be very volatile. And yeah, there are reasons that I do like the prices for certain things, and I don't like the prices for others. So a little bit of context first. I have signed the Good Boy Agreement with Games Workshop, which essentially means that every now and then I might be sent something early, which is fairly obvious considering, well, the past few days on the channel, right? We've been doing army reviews and so on. Now, that doesn't mean that I have to be all positive about Games Workshop. In fact, the way that everything was described to me was very similar to that of my relationship with Creative Assembly, meaning that yes, I have freedom to criticize products and so on. There's nothing really stopping me. And yeah, there are a few videos coming up on the channel where I'm criticizing some things, but others where I'm going to be very positive because there's certain things I do like. The next thing is, prior to getting the box, I did not know the prices of certain boxes. It kind of works in a very similar way to that of a influencer working with video game companies. Well, this has been the case with the companies that I've worked with at the very least. Keep in mind that I've worked with Frontier, I've worked with Creative Assembly, and I've worked with a few other companies. Wasn't told the prices in advance, which is perfectly fine. Eventually, when I did get the box, yes, I did have the price list there for pretty much just a few things, because that was basically what is being sent to me, right? So I didn't know what else was coming and basically what the prices were. The perfect example would actually be the Tomb Swarms, which I had no idea were getting a visual update or pretty much anything else. So yeah, color me impressed with the Tomb Swarm though, I actually quite like them. But yeah, let's talk about the prices. So on the same day as the embargo was the same day as the pre-orders, where we saw a large amount of kits coming out. Some of them new, some of them very old, and some of them not so old. It depends on the actual age of the range. We've seen a bunch of Tomb King stuff and a bunch of Bretonnian stuff. The main thing to note here is that this is not the complete range for everyone, and certain things, like iconic core units, like, the men-at-arms, the peasant bowmen, the skeletal warriors, skeletal chariots, you can't purchase them without the main stock kit right now, which is a bit of a shame, but I guess they wanted people to kind of gravitate towards the launch boxes, which, yeah, again, cool. The prices that you're going to be seeing on screen are sterling, so that is British money, that's what you get in the United Kingdom and down here in Gibraltar too, so it will vary depending on where you are in the world. Now, the prices did shock a lot of people considering that certain returning units were, in all honesty, very overcosted, whereas others not so much, which I think is a big reason why I've not been so angry. Another little bit of context here is that I do own a lot of these armies and a lot of these units, so yeah, this is stuff that I've had for many, many years, since pretty much the death of Warhammer Fantasy back in, 2015? I've also been in the hobby since 1996, so it's been a while. I've got a lot of miniatures in my backlog that still remain unpainted. But yeah, the shock was there for a lot of people, and I will agree with some things, I won't agree with others, and you've got to hear me out here, because there's certain things which have actually become better value, hell, even better value than stuff of the same age, which is currently still available for Age of Sigmar. So we're going to have an example of good value stuff first, and that would be the Tomb Guard, actually. £47.50 for 20 models. Originally, they were, 10 models in a box? And that's something which is comparable to that of the Grave Guard right now, which I believe is very similar in price, but only 10 miniatures. Both of these kits are actually more or less the same age, give or take a few years, but yeah, you're getting more Tomb Guard than you are Grave Guard. And this is something quite important to know, because we do know for a fact that we are getting boxes in terms of units as full regiments. So we know for a fact that Peasant Bowmen eventually, when they get released, will be in a box of 32. It's a shame that it's just only available right now through the start kit, mostly because some people do want to pick up Spam Peasant Bowman. So as a returning model, this is a fairly good price, and there's a few others which I kind of see that way. The Necro Sphinx and the Khmerian War Sphinx, for example, share the same kit, and what happens is that you not only get a Khmerian War Sphinx or a Necro Sphinx, but you also get a character. There's a Lich Priest in there, which you can just kit bash and turn into whatever you want. For £45, that's not a bad deal, especially when you start comparing it to like Primaris tanks or big monsters in Age of Sigmar, which some big monsters can be comparable there to, what, £60 to £100 depending on the actual model. Stuff like the Necropolis Knights or even the Sepulchre Stalkers, this is the same kit, by the way. Again, I'm fairly keen on. It's £37.50, which is more or less, even a little bit less. I believe there was a calculation someone posted online regarding Games Workshop's general inflation. So this, fairly decent. It's important to note that you're not going to be running loads and big groups of them because well, yeah, you know, you could, in theory, but in general, you're going to be having more skeletons, you're going to be having more different variety. The kit is good, especially since it comes with a lot of kit bash stuff. So if you're not using it as like Necropolis Knights, you can use those guys somewhere else, use those pieces to custom create a character, or just flash up your Tomb Guard. With regards to something returning but with a brand new look, that would be the Tomb Swarm. So £36 for 3 Forge World resin swarms. The original packaging was a blister, which would give you 2 swarms, which was essentially just a flat base with a lot of clutter. It didn't actually look like too much. That was metal also, and it was more effort to paint one of these things than a big monster, believe me. I just did not buy swarms because of that reason. This is an example of a good price for something that is getting redone, because first up, you get 1 more than the blister pack had. 2, it's a brand new model which looks a lot better. Yes, I know some people don't like Forge World resin, but it is better than either metal, or if they decide to bring the original back in Finecast, then I feel like a lot more people would be mad about it. So overall, this is an example of something good. I'm quite positive about this. I know some people don't like this, but keep in mind that this is a physical object, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. Okay, so we're going to jump into some examples of what I deem to be not great or pretty much bad pricing. And unfortunately, the Bretonnians kind of got the short end of the stick here. At least that's the way I'm seeing it. For example, the Pegasus Knights themselves come in a box of 3, which isn't too bad, you know, 2 wounds, flying unit, and so on. The issue I do have generally is, if it's going to be £37.50, it could have at least had an upgrade sprue for a command set. On the website, they show the sprues for certain things, for example, how to build the character and so on. We know that Pegasus Knights can actually have full command. I've got the book right in front of me. It's a massive shame that that's not there. Essentially, it means you're going to have to buy another sprue of knights, which generally you'll probably want a few anyway, and use that for conversion piece. Well, not really conversion pieces. It's essentially the same knight anyway, the body at least. It's quite situational that you're going to be bringing them in groups of 6 anyway, so I'm fine with a box of 3. It just should have had all its possible options. You don't know if that's what's going to happen with the box, because sometimes, you know, the Games Workshop website has a lack of information, but I'm right now looking at it, and it doesn't say anything about it having the banner, the musician, and the sword for the champion. I'll be kind of honest with you, I'm a little bit disappointed with the pricing of the Grail Knights. So these are fairly old miniatures from 6th edition, and you can't buy them as a full kit. You have to buy them either as a set of knights or as a set of command. This is £12 per model, so yeah. It's just, they're very old, they've got very good rules, but for pricing like that, I would have expected at least a new plastic kit for the rider. Keep in mind that the baseline horse kit is pretty much the same kit that is used with the Knights of the Realm, with the Questing Knights, with the Knights Errant, and so on, so it's a little bit disappointing though. If anything, I wouldn't have mind paying £50 for a group of 6. And this can kind of extend to the metal kits. I imagine that it's the price of the metal. A lot of us did complain about not wanting Finecast, and it would have probably been cheaper with Finecast. But yeah, I mean, metal over Finecast anyway, because Finecast, like, if you don't know what Finecast is, it's essentially a mix of plastic and resin, and buying those kits, they usually came warped. Some of them would just snap super easily. it's just horrible, right? Resin is fine, just not fine cast resin. It's kind of fairly obvious that the metal kits themselves are a bit too expensive, even for my liking. You know, you've got Upshati, which is £52.50 for free. They're good models. They're very, very good. They've aged fairly well, but they're metal, and I think a better pricing for 3 of them would have been £40, a little bit more expensive than the Tomb Swarms, but the Upshati are definitely going to have a lot more reason to use than the Tomb Swarms. And not being funny, even though that the Tomb Swarms are new, the Upshati look a lot better because, I mean, they're really cool models, so even with their age, they look great, right? Thing is, I don't know why or how Games Workshop do their pricing structure, and I doubt that even if I asked, I'll ever get an answer. It's very odd. The metal stuff is a little bit too much. It's the same with the Mounted Yeomen being in a group of 5 for 45, and then their command being 36 by its side. It should have just been together. Make it £50 and have a group of 10. It's not like you're going to be buying a lot of them anyway because, well, they're not really the best models, right, in terms of rules and so on, unless you're one of those people that just wants a full peasant army. I guess the cost of metal is the big issue here, because they haven't been doing metal models for a while, right? Everything's been moved slowly to Finecast, and even slower still, the Finecast models have been phased out in an effort to bring in either plastic or Forge World resin. Character models seem fine and online with everything that Games Workshop does for character models. It's £23 I've seen on average for like the new Tomb King. The Lich Priest, the really old one, is £9, so I'm really happy about that. I want to pick up a new one myself. BSBs are £23, so that's not bad. If we go to the Bretonnia section, the Questing Knight with a great weapon, yeah, £23. The Handmaiden, £23. It's basic character stuff. There is some more expensive ones, like for example, the Battle Standard Bearer on a Royal Pegasus is £40. It's a plastic kit. Usually those are centerpiece models, and they kind of put those a little bit more expensive. I don't mind that, and we'll talk about why a little bit later. And I'm actually fairly surprised with the Battle Standard Bearer Bretonnian. So you can get it mounted and on foot for 53. Pretty good price, in all honesty. Cetra's back, but he's 35, which is not bad for a metal model. I know some people wanted a new one. I'm just happy it's not Finecast. I've got a Finecast, and it was a ball ache to do, man. It was so bad. I had to re-glue stuff so much. It does seem, until proven wrong, that the grand majority of new character models are going to be Forge World Finecast. There is a few plastic ones coming out naturally. I mean, the Necrolith Dragon itself has the option to build 2 characters, one mounted and one on foot, and those are both plastic, which is great because I prefer plastic. Ultimately, I really wish that Games Workshop worked more on plastic and just got rid of Forge World resin, metal, Finecast, all of that, and just had as much plastic as possible. But that's just a me thing. I know some people do like metal. I know some people like the other stuff too. We have to talk about the start kits. Obviously, the start kits seem to be fairly decent. Games Workshop has its own army list attached to them and says that they could be around 1,250 points. I have been able to get more points out of them, in all honesty. But start kits are generally always going to be the best value for money. Keep in mind that you do get your rules here, the core rules. You also get access to pretty much a starting army. It's all core from what we've been able to see from these 2 kits, so I imagine that the other 7 factions in core will also have similar starting kits. Unfortunately, the prices we don't know individually, so we don't know how much Bretonnian Knights are going to be and how many come in a box. We don't know how much they're going to be for the Peasant Bowmen, but we do know that there's going to be 32 there, and I do believe that they did confirm that Men-at-Arms are going to come in boxes of 20. However, one thing that we do know in terms of value for the box is, well, historically for start kits, these have always been the best value. This is why people end up buying multiple. When the more older forms of the start collecting kits were the general thing, I was buying them all the time, the start collecting kits. If I wanted to start a new army, I usually ended up buying 2 or 3 start collecting kits, which would take me to around 150, 170 pounds, depending on the box, and there I was. I had something of a good basis. This, you only need 1 box, and it's more or less around that price, and it feels fairly decent from the point values that I've been able to see physically in the books. Yeah, it's not bad at all. Is there a repurchase value for this box? Well, possibly, I'll be honest with you. I imagine that the dragon itself, the Tomb King dragon, is going to be around £100. I could be wrong here. Again, I don't know the separate price, but this does look like one of those big centerpiece models that they will generally charge for, similar to that of an Imperial Knight. And if that's the case, I mean, I'll probably just buy another start box because, well, you know, you've got 40 soldiers there for Skeletal Warriors, you've got 16 horsemen, I think it was. 3 chariots and, 32 skeletal archers. Plus, you've got the extra character. I mean, it does end up being like that, right? It would have been nicer if they would have had 6 chariots rather than 3, I'll be honest with you there. But the value is there from the start kits. That's always been the case, and I imagine that it's always going to remain the case. Sure, it's all core stuff, but in more often than not, you'll want to be able to have stuff where you'll be able to switch around core, and yeah, having more than you need is usually the best. Obviously, keep in mind with weapon options too, because skeletal warriors can be spearmen or hand weapon and shield. If you've got extra bows lying around, you can make them bowmen. Or, the horsemen can also be spears, or they can be bowmen, so there's multi-purpose. You get more use out of the Tomb King box than you do out of the the Bretonnia box, but the Bretonnia box comes with a decent amount of knights. 2 groups of 6, which I'm personally running them in groups of 10. And, you've got, 32 archers and 40 men-at-arms. Men-at-arms, I feel, will be useful, but, again, Tomb King box is better. Okay, so now we're going to have a bit of a proper breakdown here, and you have no idea how difficult this is to record these videos and edit when still wearing a sling. So plastic, I would say, is fairly decent so long as they stay in the same amount of unit sizes as the Tomb Guard. If they're coming in groups of 20 or sometimes 32, like we know for the Peasant Bowmen, that is fine. That means that we're going to get complete units. You can have 2 units of 10, or you can have a unit of 20. So yeah, no incomplete units is probably the best way to go. Resin stuff so far looks good in terms of pricing and what comes with them, especially like the Tomb Swarm. The characters seem to be okay, and in line with Games Workshop's pricing and quality for the current stuff. So yeah, they're new models, right? Even the old characters there are cheap, because that priest is what, £9 again? So it's not too bad. It's not like you're going to be running multiple of them anyway, because you're probably going to be memeing with the big monsters. But yeah, the metal stuff is too much. That's the problem. I must say, the pricing for the metal stuff just confuses me. Like, I don't mind big pricing as long as it's justifiable. So, for example, when it came to the Battle Pilgrims, it's 12 for 50. They're very old metal models. Like, it should have just been 20 for 50. I would have paid that happily. I mean, I'm not going to be buying these because I have Battle Pilgrims. But even I know when it's a bit too expensive. The same thing with the Grail Knights that we talked about. They should have just been one box together, or, a little bit cheaper in price. I wouldn't have minded a little bit cheaper for separate boxes when it's going to be a group of 3. It's just because they're metal. If they were plastic, I imagine that they'd be cheaper and they'd be more in line with everything there. Their rules are tasty. People are definitely going to buy them. And we never know for the future, because there have always been rumors about a plastic Grail Knight unit. It's kind of weird. I mean, we've not seen the Questing Knights, which is odd. But, yeah. If it comes in plastic, it'll probably be better value for money. But I do feel like the metal stuff is a little bit overcosted for what it is, especially with the age of the models. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't buy Warhammer the Old World stuff. If you want to buy it, obviously you should, because, well, it's your money, and nobody, even if it's on Reddit, on Twitter, whatever, they're not your mom. Personally, coming from me, I'm going to be buying a bunch of these miniatures. I want some Tomb Guard, and I feel like they're in a very good value for money. Ultimately, Warhammer's never been a cheap hobby. I mean, you can see that when it comes to, like, 40k, where the heavy intercessors, there's, like, 5 models for, what, 40 or 50? It's a little bit ridiculous when it comes to that. But, yeah, this has always been considered a luxury good at this point. And it's something which you don't need to, and I don't need to buy these things at the beginning. So I'm saving up to buy some Tomb Guard. I'm saving up to buy a few things, but it's not a priority for me. And it won't be a priority for me until I have the funds available. It's the same thing like when I buy guitars. As some of you guys do know, I've got a really large collection of BC Rich guitars because it's the brand that I personally like. I know it's not the best, but yeah, I tend to gravitate and try to treat myself every now and then because I do play them, and that's the thing. If you're going to be using them, obviously there's a bit more value to it. There's some people from the Total War sphere who think that maybe with Backlash, prices will change. Prices will never change. Games Workshop have never really been that person to reduce prices for models as far as I can recall. It's not like Creative Assembly. The thing is, and this is something that I've got to jump into, there is more value in a physical object than there is from a digital object. If Steam were to close down today, you would lose your games. All that money that you spent on Steam is going to be gone. Whereas your miniatures will always be there, which is actually why I'm kind of happy about certain things, because there's miniatures from when I was a very small lad where I'm going to be reusing again. I've got the 5th edition Bretonnian Knights, which I've been painting up to put alongside my other Bretts. What I can say in terms of advice is don't go full ham and buy everything that you need right now. Buy 1 or 2 boxes, well, when they come back into stock, because everything's out of stock at the moment, because it looks like Games Workshop didn't really plan for this to be that popular. But, yeah, you know, buy a box here and there. Also, take advantage of deals that you can find online. I, for example, have an account with Element Games, which you can find in the description below. Essentially, it allows you to buy a kit, a Warhammer kit, usually for 10 to 25% off. It does depend. Full disclosure, if you do use my link, I do get a little bit of a kickback. It's no extra cost to you, by the way, but I do have to state that. But there's other websites that do the same thing. I'm just using them because that's the website that I'm use. And for example, the Bretonnian Battle Standard Bearer on a Royal Pegasus is £40 normally by Games Workshop. You get it for £34 directly from Element Games, or the Tomb Guard, which is usually £47.50, you can get for £40.38. I myself want to buy a certain amount of these boxes, so I will definitely be using a website like Element to be able to pick them up. I want to have a total of 5 kits of Tomb Guard because I want to do a army for Cetra and an army for the Mortuary Cult, different color schemes. The Cetra one in the royal blue that you've already seen me post around, and then the Mortuary Cult in a more muted grey, some purples and so on, hoping that maybe we get some color schemes eventually for Ark in the Black. So rather than spending for 5 boxes £237.50, I can pick it up for around, what, £202. Now, I'm not going to be dropping all that money in one go because... no, I do have other things. I have bills. I do pay my taxes, and I've got other stuff involved in my day-to-day life, which does take cash away. You know, I've got a pretty sickly cat. He's doing better, by the way. Don't get worried. It's just he's like 13, so every now and then something does go wrong. If you're going to be invested in Warhammer the Old World, it's just like any other Warhammer product. It's going to be expensive. Find the best deals that you can. There's always going to be deals in different websites. You don't have to buy from Games Workshop proper unless it's something really specific. And even then, those online-only things, you can generally call the shops that you deal with and they'll bring it in. But I feel like I've been rambling enough, so let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's have a discussion. Please, I will ask you if someone's for the prices and if someone's against the prices. A discussion is good, just don't start calling each other idiots because that's going to get nobody anywhere. It's just not a healthy environment. Rather than just going full clickbait or calling this a scandal for some reason, when this is what Games Workshop have always done, I'd rather just talk about it. You can get more value from the plastic than you will the metal. That's something very, very obvious. And I think it's just healthier if we have a proper discussion rather than making it about sensationalism. I'm not a journalist. I am a hobbyist, just like you guys. I love Warhammer. It's something that I'm very invested about, and you've seen this in the channel for the past few years, and it's definitely going to be something that I'm going to be talking about in the future. With that being said, have a good day, guys. I'm going to get some ice for my arm because, oh my god, this was difficult. There's a lot more videos coming. Thankfully, I'm ahead of schedule, so yeah, not a lot of stress in the next coming days.